tonight we are doing part two of the Liberian economy, and we are going to talk about money, money matters, or budgetary issues. Most of the time, everything is about money. So we're going to talk a little bit more about money today. In studio to discuss the Liberian economy part two and money matters, I have Mr. T. Wetty Thompson. His expertise is in accounting, taxation, and he's also a law student. Mr. Thompson, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joe. Thank you.
Also, to discuss this very important topic, I have via video Mr. Emric B. Nicole Jr. Mr. Nicole will be calling from Washington, D.C. Nicole, welcome to Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. Jad. Thanks for having me.
Mr. Nicole, his expertise is in accounting and financial management. In fact, he's a senior accountant at the American Psychological Association, that's APA. He served in the accounting and finance department. We'll be discussing money matters tonight in Focus. We want to welcome our viewers across the globe. We are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Please, and those that are on YouTube and Facebook, we say welcome to this very important topic. And let's get right into it. We start with our brother here in studio, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, just briefly say something to our viewing audience.
I never thought that the setup was so great, Thank you very much, you guys of Focus on Liberia. You're doing a great job, And, these things are good because it's educative and it will put our people in shape. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to go to D.C. to say, Mr. Nicole Jr., let's start our discussion with the definition of a budget. Most of the time when we hear people say, I'm living on a budget, or this is outside of my budget. So as an individual or a country or an organization, what is budget?
Yeah, Mr. Jad, thanks for the opportunity. Budget may sound a bit, complicated, but it's just it got more to do with the activity of balancing our income with the expenses. So a budget is a written record of money that flows in, and money that flows in is the revenue or the income, and the expenses is the one that flows out. So our budget is money that flows in versus the money that goes out. Are you there?
Individual living here in the United States or an individual in Liberia, what does it mean for me to live on a budget?
The content and context may vary because in America, you have what we call income, and most people in Liberia depend on remittances, and so even though we have a part of our population like a working force that got income, but the definition of debt or what it means is money you spend each month should equal to or at least equal to whatsoever you able to receive. That is your income. And in most cases, we see that in our community, we tend to spend more than what we actually gain as income.
Relate to on the national level. So we know that a country like Liberia will have a budget. And let's talk a little bit more on budget in the context of a country like Liberia.
Oh, like Liberia, I reviewed past budgets. One thing I see, we have budgets. We have had budgets before, but one thing I see, we don't measure what the budget has done, and we keep having budgets, but we don't know how programs are measured, what the benefit. Because if you have a budget, you want to check you want to measure the benefits to the population, to the people that are actually in need of those different programs, and we haven't had that. So it's one of the things that I'm obliged on talking about or dealing with, that the next the incoming government will be able to look into and see how we can measure, because by measurement we should be able to see programs that are workable and programs that are not workable, and be able to move funds from one area that that not workable to areas that are workable.
Example right there. Let's say in the budget we have something on education, and we say, take for instance, 2 million on education. So when you say measure that, how do you do that? Give me some examples.
For example, we have a standardized examination, like the WIRE examination. To measure that is to see how well we are doing with respect to the passes and failures of the WIRE examination. So the measurement could be how well our students are doing. We see passes and failure ratio, and be able to see if we are doing well with respect to that. That's how we measure it also. And then moving people from, for instance, from our locality to compete with other people, other students abroad, to see how best our students are doing as compared to other students abroad in different programs and so. And we need to be keen. We need to have a definition about it to see how well we are doing, as to whether we need to put much money into education.
Right back with you. Let me bring in our studio guest, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, I grew up in Liberia, where I was not taught about money. Okay, where I grew up, if you're a guy and you like to talk about money, they say you're going to steal. If you're a girl, you are talking about money, they say you're not going to be a good girl. I don't want to call that name. So even at my age, I'm allergic to money, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. What advice can you give as to fellow Liberians, even here in the diaspora? How do we manage our money, or what do we do when it comes to budgeting or planning or doing anything to that matter that involves money?
Okay. With budget got to be for a time frame. It could be maybe a month, a week, a month, or annually, and the budget is a guidance, if you have been following the budget in the U.S., at times the Congress can delay in passing, the budget. We say in ordinary times budget, but actually that's not the budget, because the budget is just a guidance. What they delay in passing is the appropriation and authorization. That's the law. If the appropriations are by department, they are done by department. Budget are items, line by line items. All right. Let's come back to what you said, that you are allergic to money. Yeah. Well, like for some of us that grew up with our grandparents, they were very thrift in spending their money. They want to keep within their means. They will always use this parable: cut your clothes according to your size. That is, keep a budget. And when you are talking about a budget, well, you measure your expenditure against your income. But one thing you must not forget: there must be some savings for future contingencies. Tomorrow when maybe somebody is sick, you may be able to take them to the hospital. And well, in America, I see lots of people, they don't live within their means. They love to show off. Yeah. Especially us from Africa. We don't keep any prudent budget, you know, and we want to attend all the parties. We want to go to the expensive boutiques, maybe places where it's supposed to be, you know, celebrities going to. We want to compete, you know, with their wearings and things. You know, you listen to some of them discussing about, you know, what they spend to buy just a clothes, a dressing for a particular occasion. You know, you might be astonished, you know, and you will ask, where are they getting the money? You know, if you don't live according to your means, you don't live within your means, you know, you will always go into deficit,
right,
and fall into trouble.
Great. So now for us in the diaspora, most of us will work, and so that concept of living within our means or budgeting may apply. What's about someone in Liberia? Maybe all the money they get is what they receive from their relative from abroad, or at least on a daily basis they go to the free port or go somewhere as to what is called hustle. So how do these people manage, or what advice do we have for them as to how to plan, to budget, or take care of themselves money-wise?
Well, it's really a pity, you know, to live in back home. It's really a pity. And they cannot live within their means, you know. If you're living in Liberia, you're living in deficit because your income doesn't, your expenses doesn't match with your income. And at the end of the day, there is no savings, you know. But we have some prudent people, some wise people, who knows that if they are making 2 cents, maybe they will use 1 cent and keep the other 1 cent for future contingencies. It's difficult. Right. Even those of us who are working, you know, and, you know, making good amount of money for the Liberian standard, you know, we could only live within our means because, you know, at the end of the day, things were too expensive.
Yeah.
You know, it's very, very torturous. You know, if you cannot live within your means, just imagine what will happen. You know, let's say we have 3 types. We can restrict our definition of budget to 3 areas: the family, the microsystem, which is the businesses, you know, and then the macro, which is national government. You understand? If the how they call it, if the micro sector, let's say a company cannot, you know, keep up with its expenditure, right, it will become insolvent. Right. And you too, you are an accountant. You know what will happen when a business continues to be insolvent over a certain amount of a period. What will happen? They will close down. They will be shut down. And even the government, if you are insolvent, you become useless to your people. You know?
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Let me go to my guest from DC, Mr. Nicole. Many of our organizations right here in the diaspora, they, you know, sometimes run into financial difficulties. I know you do a nonprofit accounting, and so you know that many of our diaspora organizations, they too have sometimes problem with money. So just I know you are well of that, tell us what we're doing wrong when it comes to managing our money as diaspora organizations.
All right, thanks, Mr. Jai. The first thing we have to look into is record keeping is the best way to go. We tend to do it on you know, or you know, recording. That is to say, oh, I won't record. Let me just keep it in my head when I receive money or when I spend this. I know it on top of my head. But before we go into budgeting, the best thing that, you know, most of our organizations can do is to keep records. Records are very important, very essential in building a budget, because you have to look at past activities to be able to build a budget. And it's one of the things I see prevalent in our communities. We don't keep records. we tend to think that this is something that we can just do and later on remember. And most cases, it's not the truth. So it's something that our work history, our activities, not reflective of what needs to be done. So we organizations, associations, and so in our communities, I'll admonish you before you start to keep budget, or you start to have a budget, is to look at past activities, and past activity can only be looked at based on records, receipts, uh, uh, invoices, and all of those things, because those things are very, very important in drafting a budget. If you don't know how much you spent during the past 2, 3, 4 months or 6 months, how will you be able to have a budget that will be reflective of your mission, your goals, your vision, and so it's highly impossible. You're going to be doing a guesswork, and that's the reason why most cases we fall short, because we don't have metrics, we don't have those things in place. So I will admonish those associations, those organizations, to start to keep records of everything we do when it comes to the operational part of the organization.
My studio guest, Mr. Thompson, earlier about people in Liberia where the unemployment rate is so high, and people are not working. All they depend on is to hustle or to receive money from abroad, and there are very few people that are working. So in that instance, budgeting or planning or keeping records become very difficult. Any advice for our brothers and sisters how to manage their money in spite of the challenges?
Yeah, I think with the look of things, the first thing we have to keep in mind, if you don't have an income, there's no way you can budget. Okay, with that being said, remittances and so from abroad could help, but we still have to look at needs and wants. Needs and wants is something that we haven't understood in our community. Our needs and our wants. And if we can understand our needs versus our want, we will be able to live within our means, because people in our community think that, oh, that Jaguar or that Jordan and so is a need. It's not a need. So to differentiate that, or to have a better way of life, even if you receive like $50 a month, you can still budget, because $50 is like an income that you should be able to afford what $50 can afford for a month. You can't have $50 a month and then try to go and live in a place that costs like $600-700. It's unrealistic. So those are the things that we have to look into. We have to first of all know our needs and our wants, and it's something that we haven't in our community identified. We haven't looked into those areas as to what we need versus what we want.
Let me, Mr. Thompson, considering the price of rice in Liberia, the exchange rate is like what I hear now is 1 to 32. That is $1 to 32 American to 32 Liberian, 132 Liberian dollars. Things are really hard. Okay, so let's look at even the exchange rate and prices. What are the ramifications when it comes to such a high exchange rate? Sometimes I wonder how this is even set in the first place. Whose idea is this? How does it come about? And how are the people coping looking at this kind of exchange rate?
Well, the exchange rate is determined by market forces, the demand and supply. And government has a part to play, in the, rate at any given time, because government blatantly disregards the citizenry, and there's no love for them, those that are in the hierarchy. So because of that, the people, they are forced to suffer. Recently, the central bank, I don't know, they passed a law, the House of the legislatures passed a law that if you send in any remittance to Liberia, a portion of it will be paid in Liberian dollars. And before it used to be 100% US, you know. And why was that necessary? It's just like you taking sand and trying to put fill the sea up with sand. Is it possible? You have the allocation of oil wells. You have mineral resources. You know, you have custom duties. You have other things that you know, other funds that you collect. If you cannot maintain the government with those funds, you know, will the little money that the people are receiving, will it be able to help you? That's, you know, really is abject, you know, wickedness, you know, on the part of government. They are not sensitive to the plight of the people, you know. So it's difficult, it's tough. You know, if my brother just said that if you don't have an income, you cannot have a budget. It's impossible, you know. And people just live by, that's why the crime rate is very high over there. People live in their houses just as if they are in prison, iron bars all over the place, you know, because you are not safe. You know, if you come from the Western world to go to Liberia now, you will be a target for armed robbers, you know. So I don't know. It's tough. We cannot explain it economically how these people are surviving.
Right. So what can the government do, for instance, to control this exchange rate?
Well, actually, I was following the Liberian economy at one time, but because of government disregard, you know, for the people, you know, I stopped following it. I think the budget now is $1 billion or so, you know, or 500,000. I don't know. I can't remember, you know. But Liberia, you know, what we need is so small, and we have income coming from, revenues coming from, you know, various sources of government operations, like the mines, the oil well, like the how they call it, auction the last time, and they have money coming from friends overseas, you know, or other governments, you know, and other how they call it, the World Bank. They get loans from the World Bank and things, you know. So it's supposed to be very simple, you know, to manage such an economy.
Right.
But they are making it complicated, as if it's so complicated, you know, and they need to respect the oath that they take, you know. But nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to respect the oath. Everybody wants to do their own thing.
You're right. You know. So on the part of the citizens, let us think about some income generating activities. Okay, so has someone living in Liberia or even here, you know, there should be some ways of generating income so as to help the government, because we always say government cannot do it all. What are some of the income generating activities that people in Liberia can carry on to help themselves?
You see, the people says once bitten, twice shy, you know. And before the war, you know, we had the cooperatives, you know, in place, you know, that were helping farmers, you know, receive some deposits for farmers and help them, you know, with their farms and things like that, you know. But all the war came and everything was swallowed. We have the ACDB, and we have also had the housing banks. They were doing very well, you know. But and because of also bad management, you know, whatever was deposited into these government treasuries and the banks, you know, cannot be accounted for. So these people were left in limbo, you know. So first of all, it has to be a project that will build confidence, you know, to build confidence. Okay, we could talk about, okay, government needs to create jobs. What job are they going to create? I think one of the questions, that you sent me is government creating jobs. How can government create jobs? How will they? Who's going to come? It will take time. It's going to take time because we keep on starting from square one. Always we go from elementary stage. We can graduate from the elementary stage. We are always in the elementary section.
Thank you. Let me go to Nicole on the income generating activities that can be carried on in Liberia. And Nicole also discussed what the role of the banks can be in helping Liberians who want to start their own business, or what other income generating activities can they engage in?
Yeah, thanks again. My position, I agreed with Weddy over there about some of the issues we are we are encountering. But if you look at Liberia right now, with the unskilled labor, it's one of the issues that we are faced with. So, I'm sorry. So, with that being said, right now the only thing, and the good thing, Dr. Dolo, lays on emphasis on the agricultural programs in Liberia. We have what it takes to breed, to help the unskilled labor. At the same time, the skilled labor is one of the areas where both companies can operate at the same time. So since we have Liberia operating at 25% of capacity, I truly believe that with considering agriculture, mechanized farming in Liberia, you're going to attract all those unskilled laborers. You're going to attract all of the unskilled laborers. And when you have people gainfully employed, it creates economic activities. I am not an economist, but it helps a lot. So with our situation, it's unique. We don't have the skilled labor. We don't have the capacity in skilled labor. So we need to bring, investors that will invest in programs that's going to help the unskilled labor. So with that being said, I think the agricultural programs and things going to help a lot in Liberia. It's going to attract both the skilled labor and the disparity with the unskilled labor. So it's my take. It's a lot to invest in. So that's why I keep saying with our budget, we have to reassess. We have to measure those areas that weren't successful in the past 10 and 12 years and move money from those areas to move to areas where we think we can make some gains. And it's one of the good thing is one of the things that we are discussing this now, that people that are listening, that are in the authority right now, will be able to take cues and be able to take some points, key points, to be able to make some adjustments or amendments in moving forward, Liberia forward. We have potential. We have great potential. I'm not going to dispute that. And it all depends on us. And with our honesty, we have to try to be honest, about ourselves, those things that we need, some of our, deficiencies and some of, our downfalls and so. And when you look at yourself in the mirror and know that you need to make amends, you need to make some changes to some of the issues that have, faced our country for so long, trust me, we're going to make gains. We're not going to be disappointed about Liberia right now. We just keep pounding the messages and in a friendly and a cordial way. We have to keep pounding it. We have to keep telling our people, we can still make gains. It's not late. And the agricultural sector with the mechanized farming is one area that's going to attract both skilled and unskilled labor.
Mr. Nicole, what you've just said still goes back to government, meaning that it's government that is going to invest, it's government that is going to do X, Y, Z. On the part of the individuals, what can we do? What can the citizens do, the ordinary people?
In the meantime,
in that instance.
Hopes so high. We don't want to have our hopes so high. And when you have your hopes so high, even if you have expectations, and then your expectation is not met, you kind of like be discouraged about the activity. But we should understand too that the 12 years with the UP-led government wasn't just in vain, wasn't just like not making gains. So based on what we have right now, I understand that with our people right now, it's a different thing. It's a different thing in that the psychological part. There's a lot of different things being interplayed. The psychological part. We need programs that will rehabilitate, because when you rehabilitate, people think in the right minds, and it hasn't been done. We've never had a program, or we never had programs that been rehabilitating effectively. That people are going to be changed from being drug addicts to being normal
Mr.
people
Nicole, hold
to
that thought. We're going to
integrate.
take a short break. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to delve into that a little more. We're going to go to our unemployment rate and what that means, and we can discuss more of these. For those of you watching, you are watching Focus on Liberia, and we are discussing money matters as it relates to the Liberian economy. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the Liberian economy, money matters. With me to discuss this, I have Mr. T. Wetty Thompson. He's in studio right here in Atlanta, Georgia. I also have via video phone Mr. Emre B. Nicole. We say welcome back to Focus on Liberia and to our viewers across the globe. Thanks for joining. Let's go back to discussing the Liberian economy and mainly budgetary issues. And if you are watching us on Facebook or on YouTube, you can call the studio. The number is pinned to the video. Please call us and you can give your comments, ask questions to these gentlemen right here as our guest. All right. Mr. Thompson, right now our unemployment rate, I don't know even what it is, but it's high. Okay. What can be done to bring that down?
Well, the unemployment rate is very high, and from the look of things, government is supposed to be the highest, employer in the country, to bring the employment rate, the unemployment rate down, we have to create jobs. Number one, I think another thing we need to do is, it's an austerity period. Everybody has to suffer it. Not just the ordinary citizens. And we have to create jobs. How are we going to create jobs? How are we going to create jobs? We look at the national budget, what we have to spend for 2017, 2018, because the budget period is from July to June, is $563 million. I think that's what the Department of Revenue has budgeted as their revenues, and most of that money will go into government ministries and agencies allocation, and appropriation, and we need to source businesses from abroad, make the investment climate conducive, so that these people can come and invest into our country.
Right.
And one way we can do that is, is to pass laws that will be investment friendly. Like in the U.S., most corporations, will prefer to register in Delaware, because Delaware is very investment friendly. Even their corporation taxes, the state corporation taxes are lower than other states in America. So Liberia can follow suit, just like the maritime agency. Liberia has, I think, the most fleets, and I'm sure it's still the same. We still have the most fleets registered under us. And this is because we have friendly maritime laws, that bringing these ship owners to Liberia to register with our maritime agency. So we have to create jobs. Well, we were talking about mechanized farming. Well, mechanized farming is very good, if we can get hold of that. But what are we going to farm? Now, like rubber now, we know that the revenue for rubber is dwindling because synthetic has taken over. Natural rubber, what we used to produce with natural rubber before, is now being produced using synthetic products, synthetic raw materials. So now I see we have this palm plantations. We have two of them, one in Cape Mount and Bomi, and the other one in the southeast. I can't remember the names of the companies.
Golden Verolian.
Okay, Golden Verolian, and then the other one from Bomi.
Right.
You know.
Okay, so those are ways government can create jobs. And there's a comment on Facebook. It's from Panendo. He's saying there is the critique that Liberians are not entrepreneur or business minded. That is why they don't get involved in business that can enable them to generate income. Do you think that's the case?
For sure. Even in the US here, you know, our same attitude from back home, we've brought it here. We prefer to go to the Ghanaians farmers market, the Nigerians farmers market, but if you look around, you will hardly find any Liberian, you know, with a farmers market. You know, we got very few of them, you know. So it's true that we are not entrepreneurs. We don't have an entrepreneurship ability, you know, but this can be developed. You know, this is an era for development. Whatever we were not doing before, we have to start doing them now, you know. And to build the economy of the country, you know, the citizens, the private sector got to be involved, you know, to build the economic, you know, the sector. We have to get involved as citizens. It's not only going to be the government,
right.
You know.
Let me go to Emmerich in DC. Emmerich, the question of the unemployment rate comes to you as well, and what can government do to provide jobs?
Yeah, like I said, you have to look at areas where you have the availability to be able to attract jobs. And one area I've referenced over and over is the agricultural sector. Looking at our unique situation, we can take some of those cues from Ivory Coast, and so they have been successful in that area. And my point is, if you look at the disparity between the skilled labor and the unskilled labor, is a lot in between. And the only area right now that can accommodate for the unskilled labor, and then we become successful, is the agricultural sector, the mechanized farming. If we can tap into that and put money into that area, I'll tell you this, we will be heading into the right area or the right direction. And it's one of the things I expect, the incoming government to actually look into, because we don't have the capacity right now. We don't. And like Dr. Dodo said a couple of weeks ago, I think last week on the show, he said we are operating at 25% of capacity. And that's just the truth. So it's sad, but it is the truth. So the only thing we need to do, focus on areas where we have the strength, where we have the capacity, and put into those areas. And at the same time, transition people after we have, we have entered into those areas, transition people from that area to, becoming skilled laborers. And that's why I picked, the agricultural program, because I've been researching it for a very long time. And I know we have the soil, we have, the components to be successful in that area.
Quote, Liberians cannot live by government alone. How can we shift the focus from our government being the highest employer as it is now to shift that focus to the private sector? What can we do in that instance?
I think we have to look at ourselves first. We have to be honest. We have to be ethical. We have to, because a lot of families overseas or abroad, they take businesses back home that can be able to help their family members in Liberia. So my point is, first of all, we have to work on ourselves. Everything is not government's fault. Everything is not, you can't just blame people. We have people abroad with good intention to give back to their communities, give back to their families. So my thing to families overseas, to family in Liberia and other places, take advantage of it. Be honest. Keep records. Be sincere. Have ethical values. And you know what? You may start small, but it's going to expand based on those values, those values that are going to make a business to grow. And we see it over and over. I mean, I have been victimized by, taking business over there and then putting it into the hands of families. And we see that over and over. It's a part, and that's why I don't blame government a lot on some of these issues that we are going through now. I see it as something that we have to work on ourselves individually. So my advice to family members: if your family can start you off with anything, take advantage of it, be sincere, push it, and it's going to grow. But we don't have that tendency because we are so used to, or we've been used to handouts, and it's one of the things that we have to stop in Liberia.
That issue of family business or people running businesses, most of the time in the diaspora, we get the calls of a family member call and say, hey, please send me money. I want to do this business. I want to do a coal business, gasoline business, and what have you. What is the problem there? Do you think they have the skill to run a business? I remember a relative call and say he wanted to start selling petroleum products. So I asked, what is the market analysis that you have done that tells you that going into petroleum product business is the right kind of business for you to do? So do people really have the skill or of what they're doing, or what can we do now to really equip people? So maybe they are being dishonest, or they are stealing the money or blowing it up because they don't have the skills to run a business.
Yeah, Mr. Ja, I agree with you to some of those points. They don't have it, and I think it's incumbent upon us to be able to train them, no matter what what business it is. I think people overlook the magnitude of the loss on a business, and we think that, oh, because someone invested $300 is nothing. It boils down to the same, getting used to having handouts. And so if you work for your money, I will tell you the truth, every penny gonna mean a lot. But we're not used to it back home, so we think that, oh, when someone, your family member invests $500, $200, it's like when you blow it up, it's nothing. But we need to, first of all, try to teach them the skills. We need to be able to build capacity. We need to be able to do that. It's one of the things, one of the errors that we overseas, we make. We expect them to know better, but the way of running a business, whether big or large or so or medium, is different. You have to have certain training, certain qualities, and we think that by threading over there, it's like we expect them to do, but sometimes it's not intentional. So we can't always blame it on them. We need to sit with them, train them as to how to have records, record keeping. We need to sit and train them as to how to make profits. We need to sit and train them as to how to market the business. Those are things that you cannot just have unless you have training for those, those different attributes.
Working in Liberia, I believe you work with Firestone and also Coca-Cola. Okay, in the accounting field, give us a picture. Give us a picture of what it is like to work in that, because most of the time what you hear is working in those areas, the people that are there, they are not working properly, or what is the issue when it comes to actually working as heading an office where you manage accountants, you manage people who take care of our money?
Well, with these institutions, the private sector, it's much is put into planning, and before anything is executed, it's planned, it's forecasted, and they try to mnemonic the results, the end result, what it should be like, So tax are set aside, but they are planning, before they are given out to be performed, So you work just like a robot, and they want you to accomplish that. Well, people can be lazy, and you will expect that, where human beings are involved. But, they try to encourage their workers, You know, you have to encourage the workers because they are not machines. You know, they are human. They need some rest time. You know, and things. And with working in an accounting and an area in a corporation, you know, like Firestone, and most recently I was with Comium, you know, and with these areas, you know, if you don't work and don't produce, definitely they will set you down. They're not going to wait, you know, right, for you to make an error.
So in that case, it's different from working with the government of Liberia?
Well, with the government, not only government of Liberia, government everywhere in the world, government and civil servants are always like that. They carry that laissez-faire, you know, attitude when they go to work. You know, they don't want to come to work on time. They don't want to, how they call it, when they come to work, they want to leave before time. And, you know, their tax are not defined. You know, because it's not defined, properly defined, you know, they don't execute, you know, in an orderly and timely manner. So that's the problem.
Your expertise is also in taxation. Mm-hmm. So I want us to talk about, you know, the Liberian tax code, or how is it when it comes to the Liberian people collecting taxes. I remember I had a family member who works at finance who was going around collecting taxes. How is it done in Liberia, if you don't mind to share any experience with Liberia?
Because right now they have the Department of Revenue in Liberia. So there's a great improvement. You know, this lady that is there, Frida Tamba, you know, I've been knowing her for a very long time, you know, from my Cooper's Librarian days, you know, when she was with LBDI, you know, she took professionalism there, you know, and you know the laws has been the revenue laws has been streamlined. You know, there's much, as I said earlier on, there's much more improvement, and they have some professionals, they have some accountants, they have lawyers, you know, and you know, professional guys who are, you know, heading the various departments, and the tax has been, you know, split according to specialization. You know, it's not like before. You know, like before, everything was very, very confusing. You know, and people didn't even know what they were doing. But now there is some sense of purpose, and it's good if you know, if the new government can keep all there. I'm sure, because it's an authority, and the authority, I think, is just like the court. You can just change them. A new government can just change them. You know, they have to retirement. I mean, they have to reach the retirement age, and then they go out, they exit.
Talking about the new government, there is a question here on Facebook from Ramsey Doe. Ramsey is saying, would the incoming government be able to set the price control throughout Liberia? So when it comes to the price of gasoline, the price of rice, price control.
Well, for me, you know, for me, I'm not an economist, but when it comes to price, I love for the prices to be determined by marketing forces, because that's what we learn in economics, you know. Let it be determined by demand and supply, you know, and, you know, let's try to, you know, bring in the essentials, you know. And, well, before, government used to subsidize some of these essential goods, like rice. They used to subsidize it, you know. You could remember I think the rice riot, you know, and I think one of the rioters, one of the head of the rioters, I think Marcus Matthews, was saying that they will sell rice for this amount, you know, which was very impossible, you know. And you know, like, we have rice, we have gasoline. You know, gasoline is very essential. You know, gasoline to determine the price of other things, so many other things, because you need gasoline to move things around the country. And I think they have a very good system now where you will not experience shortage in basic commodities in Liberia. The time I was there, I don't know up to now if it's the same, but I'm sure it's still the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. We are. Let me go to Emmerich in DC. Emre, I know you have suggestions on growing the economy. You said that before, but let's talk about waste reduction in government. You know, the finance and the accounting guys are able to see waste when it comes to what is happening in the country. Where do you see waste in Liberia?
Right. Thanks for that question. When you see the budget, right? The itemization of the budget, you see one thing: travel. Travel. We need to cut back on travel. You know, travel expenses, travel expenditure is a whole lot for meaningless programs or meaningless reasons why we travel, and then we take a hit on travel. I look at the previous budget and I see that they spend a enormous amount on traveling. I think we have technologies nowadays like teleconferencing, and some of those programs can be done at home, that we don't need to pay that much money to travel. And one of the areas I see, the payroll area in Liberia, they need to audit the payroll area. And payroll, we spend so much money for people that for work that we actually don't see people do, and it's one of the areas too that we need to look into. So with payroll, with travel, and then our fleet, the cars, it's so unnecessary to have a country that is struggling and then have like so many cars that we spend so much money on. So we can be able to cut back on those areas and redirect those funds in areas that the general population or the public going to benefit from. All we are saying right now as a financial, analyst or manager is to put funds to where we need them to be put into. And we're not having it. So we will keep talking about it. We'll keep discussing it to see how we can redirect all those funds.
Statements on your current job. And when I look at financial statement, you look at the financial statement of a company, you are able to determine the health of that company, whether it's viable or not. When it comes to the government of Liberia, what will you look at to tell me whether the government is doing well financially or not?
No, but one area I see, Mr. Ja, is when you look at our financial statement, right? It's troubling. It's troubling. We tend to rely on aids, donor funds, and so we tend to beg to be able to be a functional society. That is not right. That is not right. I think with those funds, we don't need to rely on aids from different places or funds from different places. Like we need to rely on things that we can do and be able to have income on those things. And that's the reason why, like Mr. Thompson just said, we talked about Firestone, we talked about metal steel and those places. The prices of those commodities on the world market is something that we cannot rely on. So we have to rethink as to our way forward. And the best way forward is to get into programs that are going to be meaningful to generate the right income for us to. Because if you don't have a good amount of export, I will tell you this: you're going to be at the expense of other countries. You're going to be lingering in and waiting for donor aids, and we don't want that. So with what you just ask, I think we need to reevaluate. We need to sit on the table and think about a way forward. And it's possible because Liberia is new. There's more room for growth. That's the good thing. We still have positivity in Liberia.
As we are about to draw down the curtains, but let me bring Mr. Thompson in the discussion. Mr. Thompson, Liberians have been doing accounting for so long. Okay, I remember long ago we have people majoring accounting, financial statements, and I know we have a lot of CPAs and all that, okay, in the country. What has been the impact of having so many Liberians major accounting, working in the accounting field? What has been the impact on the country?
Well, the problem is government doesn't like to use the available expertise. They are there, they're qualified, you know. You know, we have friends, you know, who are qualified. And right now, the LICPA, the institute, you know, they've given exams now, you know, through the Ghana Chartered Accountants Institute, you know. These people are there, and most of them are in the private sector. You can find them in government because maybe they are not related to somebody in power, or government doesn't want, you know, to use them, you know, maybe because, I don't know, for whatever reason, you know, and they are not recruiting from them. You see, if you got a professional accountant, you know, what you will get from a professional accountant is more, you know, authentic, you know, than getting from someone who's not a professional accountant, maybe somebody with just a BSc or maybe a master's, you know. So what government has to do is to sit down, like the Ministry of Finance. Maybe you might not give the head of the Ministry of Finance to the Institute of Chartered Accountant, like what they do with the lawyers, you know. I'm sure before a Minister of Justice is appointed, you know, some of these areas where, you know, a lawyer has to be in charge, you know, like Deputy Minister for Legal Affairs, you know, they consult with the Bar Association. So government needs to start consulting with the LICPA, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, you know, and get these guys, you know, let them do the work. Like some time ago, before the war, you know, the pre-war period, we used to have how they call it, LICPA, the CPAs, you know, to audit, you know, government projects, you know, and how they call the World Bank, you know, was, you know, paying for those audits. I think we have to reinstitute that.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Nicole for his final statement. Mr. Nicole, we're about to draw down the curtains, and we want to hear your final thoughts.
Congratulations to the incoming government, and we are here to help Liberia. We're going to help in every way possible. But what we see, like, you know, I always reference, you know, Dr. Dolo's statement with regards to our capacity is the truth, it's the harsh truth, and we need to build capacity in Liberia. By getting a master's degree or doctoral degree, it's not going to help Liberia. We have to be people with the pragmatical, ideology and concept. We have to be a pragmatist, and or else we're not going to move anywhere, because if we don't understand the inner working of any programs or any issues or so, you cannot reform the issue if you don't have the idea, the concept as to how it works. So with that being said, you know, this is the way to move forward. And then I thank you and then the listening audience for tonight, the show tonight. And then I hope we are able to take you to some of the issues that I raised tonight and some of the suggestions. And I appreciate you having me on tonight.
And sharing your expertise with our viewers. Mr. Thompson, let me come to you. Before I even ask for your final words, I had an accounting teacher. I was not doing accounting. And if you went to Monrovia College in the 1980s, you had a man called Frank Asari. And he was teaching accounting, business, math, and economics. And what he used to tell us to encourage people to be accountant, he said, accounting next to God. Mr. Thompson, do you believe? Is that a true statement?
Well, I don't know, but if you look at the Bible, those were the disciples that were close to Jesus, you know, like Matthew. Matthew was an accountant, you know, and even Judas Iscariot, you know, was an accountant. You know, Jesus respected accountants. And the only, during the last day, during, how they call it, the judgment day, you know, God will ask you to give an account. So That's where I came from. That accountants are next to God.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So you are next to God. Give us your final statements.
Well, I want to thank the organizers of Focus on Liberia. This is a great program, you know, and our people back home will be able to listen to us, and those that are scattered all over the diaspora, they will be able to listen to us and get some insight into what we're doing. Maybe what we can do also is to get manuscripts of, you know, what is being said here, you know, and maybe, you know, maybe we can send it to the government, or, you know, the new government, or maybe somebody that will be responsible for good governance, you know, let them look into it, so you know, they might be able to take few extracts from there and be able to implement them. Liberia has always been an experiment. I think this time around we need to move from that experiment stage, you know, and we need to transition now into something tangible, something concrete. We need to, Liberia needs to grow, you know. Before the war, you know, everywhere we were, you know, the torchbearers for Africa. Things were not happening there, but everybody look up to Liberia, you know, as the next America. You know, so most people who want to come to America will go first to Liberia, and from there they will use it as a stepping stone to come over. So we need to. Our country it has so much potential, but it's always been mismanaged. So we want to change this time around. So thank you very much for the program, and thank you for the invitation. I'm always available.
And thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your time and sharing your expertise with us. We want to thank our studio manager, Evangelist Patrick Ansa. We want to thank our producer, Mrs. Yasendi Martinque. We want to thank our guest relations manager and our product engineer, Mrs. Stephanie Setro. Next week, we're going to be delving into the history of Liberia. I'm excited about it. We're going to talk about the history of Liberia and talk about the history and the culture of the various ethnic groups in Liberia. It's going to be an exciting time. I want you all to stay tuned. We want to thank all our viewers across the globe. We want to thank those that are advertising with us. As Mr. Thompson has suggested, we want transcript to be sent to Liberia. All this requires your support. We want to thank all of you who are supporting us, who keep following us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Please, we appreciate your time. We love you. Keep encouraging us and keep sending us those letters and the suggestions. We really want to appreciate you. We thank you to Mr. Panedo, who has been very supportive and working behind the scenes, and all the other people that have been giving us tremendous support as we focus on Liberia. Remember, Liberia is the only one country that we have, and it is us, it's incumbent upon us to do everything it takes to make it the country we want it to be. Thank again for watching. My name is Dennis Jar, saying so long.
You're hiding on this side.
No, ese está.